When you draft players, eventually they have to produce on the field. That's a given. But the move the Texans made, the biggest move of the draft, the package deal, trading up for CJ Stroud, or trading up for Will Anderson and drafting CJ Stroud, is there some hidden value in that move that doesn't have anything to do with what could happen on the field of play? The answer is yes. I'll tell you why in another edition of The Locker Room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's The Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker Room. Yeah, we in the locker room.
Obviously, at the end of the duration of these rookie contracts, we're going to look back and we're going to talk about how did these guys produce on the field. The best draft in Texans history is likely the 2006 draft, which D'Amico Ryans was a part of. And it was heavily scrutinized because they decided to go with Mario Williams instead of making the splash with Vince Young or Reggie Bush. The Texans, this draft, the 2023 draft, they kind of did the opposite, and they went with the splash. And it can be discussed. It can be dissected. Do you think the Texans should have taken a quarterback? Do you think they should have waited? There's people that will look back and, put together what they could have done at 2, then 12, then 33, and still had 2 first-round picks next year. But I do think there's some hidden value in the move that the Texans made to trade up for Will Anderson and to draft CJ Stroud at number 2. And we'll never know if the Texans had just picked one guy in that range, whether they would have gone with Will Anderson or CJ Stroud. I look at it as kind of a package deal, but I do think there's some hidden value that can go a long, long way with this organization, and it could make this draft a success no matter what happens on the field. And I know there's hardos that'll say, what? All that matters is if you win games. It's all about winning games. It's all about if you win or lose and if they produce on the field. To a certain point, you may be right, but anyone who's been covering this organization, following this organization, going to these games the last couple of years, it's a little bit deeper than just producing on the field. If you listen to the way the people talk about them locally, if you listen to the way people talk about them nationally, and if you just look at the way that people have felt about this organization, I think you can make a case there is hidden value. And I have 6 examples of potential hidden value for the Texans' selection of Will Anderson and CJ Stroud along with the trade. Hidden value number 1 is the fan base is excited locally. Now, there was a lot of excitement before this draft, but I haven't seen the fan base this excited in a long, long time. And it's really nice to see. I gave the draft a solid B, and I would say 90% of the people disagree with me because they thought it was an A+. Does that matter? Maybe. They've gotten, even since the hiring of D'Amico, I think they've gotten 3,000 more season tickets. I'm sure they got more after the draft. So I think an excited fan base locally is important. I don't know that you could have afforded to try to be the smartest team in the room. And quite frankly, I don't know that Nick Caserio has earned the right to make like a huge decision like that. I know he's been through a lot. I know a lot of the skepticism is not, and most of the skepticism has nothing to do with anything that he's done. But at this point, I think it's D'Amico's squad. I think the McNair's got to figure something out, and the organization can come together, and they've excited the fan base locally, which I think has value. Hidden value number 2 is national credibility. You've heard the way that national media types have talked about the media or the team here. You've heard some of it's been extremely unfair, but there's been a reputation about the Texans that, they don't know what they're doing. There's a disconnect, etc. If you listen to the national media types talk about the Texans now, there's national credibility. There's excitement. There's people saying they're going to turn it around quickly. Whether they do or not, I don't know, but I don't think the Texans, no matter what happens, like if CJ Stroud ends up being a bust, I don't think people are going to come back and say that the Texans are incompetent and blame them for that, which I do think matters a little bit. So you've excited the fan base locally, you've excited the national media types and added to credibility there. Hidden value 3 is this is a cool place to be. You have Marvin Harrison Jr. and Micah Parsons shouting out selections of third-round picks. It seems like Houston is a cool place to be. Will Anderson and CJ Stroud are pumped to be here. They're talking about Swarm. So you've just really improved the vibes a little bit. So the first three reasons: excited fan base locally, national credibility, and a cool place to be. You could make a case, well, what does that really matter? Does that really mean anything? And the answer may be no. I think it means a little something, but the next three reasons, I think they could actually add to on-field success. And I want to lay those out in the locker room. #1 source for Texans daily digital content. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central on Sports Radio 610. So hidden value 4, you gave CJ Stroud some company. And I don't know what it's like for a quarterback to have the weight of the world on his shoulders, especially when you're heading into an unfamiliar spot. But if CJ Stroud, like let's say CJ Stroud was not ready to be an NFL quarterback, or let's say there were question marks, I think having Will Anderson as like a co-face of the organization, I think there's actually some value there. I think you made your quarterback comfortable, and I think a lot of quarterbacks that get drafted high, they're not as comfortable when they come into organizations, and on top of all the learning and stuff like that, there's just like a big gap that you have to overcome. And if you watch CJ Stroud and Will Anderson on the stage together, they were finishing each other's sentences. It's almost like they're coming in as a group. And it's not like you took CJ at 2 and then you took someone at 12 and all eyes are on CJ. All eyes are on both of them. And I think it's important to make your quarterbacks comfortable systematically, and as far as just a culture. And sometimes you put too much pressure on guys when you bring them in. And I think bringing Will Anderson in with CJ Stroud, I think it kind of makes your quarterback a little bit more comfortable. And who knows how that correlates to all the other things that CJ is going to have to do. But I do think there's some value in that. And whether or not you thought CJ Stroud should be selected #2, I think we can say with straight faces that if it were a schoolyard style draft and we weren't factoring in future equity, et cetera, if you just lined up and picked the quarterbacks, CJ Stroud more times than not is going in the top 2. I don't think Will Levis and Anthony Richardson are going ahead of him, as well as Hendon Hooker. Now, if you're going to factor in that Hooker goes in the 3rd round and Levis goes in 33, maybe you could say that. But schoolyard style, you got the second guy, and he's more comfortable because he's with Will Anderson. And a bonus piece of hidden value, and Crumpler brought this up the other day. John Crumpler brought this up the other day in the post reaction. Will Anderson was probably going to be the #1 pick in last year's draft had he been eligible. So he might have gone ahead of Walker and ahead of Hutchinson. So you added potentially a guy that would have gone #1 in the current draft, and now you have a package deal. And I think that makes CJ comfortable. And I think it's important to make the quarterback comfortable when you have both of those guys going through the process together. Hidden value 5, a healthy front office. And healthy doesn't necessarily mean you agree all the time. We've become kind of used to a situation where one guy is doing something behind the scenes and this guy's pushing the strings and these guys are arguing and they can't figure something out. If someone in the front office didn't want a quarterback and they decided to go with the quarterback, it's healthy because you came to some sort of agreement. Now, I will say if the draft class doesn't work out on the field, I think Nick Caserio would probably be the one that would take the fall as opposed to D'Amico Ryans. But the disagreement and being healthy, a healthy front office, I think is valuable. We also got to take into account, this is different for Nick Caserio. Like this whole process has been different. When you talk about uncomfortable and you talk about some of the stuff that Lombardi and others were saying, a lot of that's just common sense. Nick Caserio for 2+ decades has been the expert on the offensive system that he was evaluating when it came to bringing in players. He was running that system for a long, long time. Now this is a new system. Bobby SLOWIK probably knows a little bit more about it. Hell, D'Amico Ryans might know a little bit more about it. So Nick Caserio kind of being the authoritative voice, it's a little bit different, but it's healthy that D'Amico Ryans, Nick Caserio, ownership, whoever, decided that they were going to do what they decided to do, and they all seem happy about it. And they seem to be on the same page. Hidden value number 6 is the SLOWIK factor. If Bobby SLOWIK was in on CJ Stroud, I think that's what matters the most, because we've seen this system make quarterbacks look very, very good, and maybe quarterbacks with limitations. Kirk Cousins has made millions of dollars in this system. Jimmy Garoppolo was one throw away from a Super Bowl in this system. You had Jared Goff go to a Super Bowl in this system. Tua, we wondered if Tua was even going to last in the league. Hell, a year before Mike McDaniel got there were people saying that, Ryan Fitzpatrick or 2 years should have started in a crucial game before he got hurt. And Mike McDaniel had Tua as a MVP candidate before he got hurt. So if Bobby SLOWIK is close to what those guys are, and he's good at maximizing a quarterback, even if you think CJ Stroud has some sort of limitations, the offensive system can make up for that. So that's just a little bit of hidden value. Obviously, you're going to need these guys to perform, but excited fan base, national credibility, cool place to be, Stroud company, healthy front office, and the SLOWIK factor. Those are the reasons that there could be some hidden value. If I left anything off, if you disagree with what I said, be sure to comment, be sure to subscribe, be sure to listen to me 10 to 2, Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central on Sports Radio 610. We got a lot to get into, a lot of excitement. It's good to, we've been doing this since the start of last season, every day, consistent Texans content. And people seem to at least be excited now, and I'm excited because, as you always know, I always end it this way. When it comes to this Texans game, we're all in this together. Have a good week. We'll react to all this. We'll cuss. We'll discuss. I appreciate everyone for coming through the locker room.
Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the